Dan Rubenstein, we are so back.
So back, baby.
So back. Week 1. Just 2 games away from officially being in the books as we come to you, to many of you watching this live.
Yes.
Deep into the night on Saturday, we've got a USC LSU game. We've got a Boston College Florida State game. We've got some games that are going on as we speak, but by and large, Dan, a lot of action to talk about, much more action than we've had in a good long time, sir. How are you?
I'm great. I was going to say, if something wild happens in the Washington-Weber State game or in the New Mexico-Arizona game, the reason we're not touching on it is, I don't know, it's late, and we have a lot of games to discuss, and if something does crazy, if something happens crazy in one of those games, we'll hit it on the Tuesday show, 100%.
We will absolutely hit it on the Tuesday show. That is sort of the whole vibe of this. We're going to react tonight. We're going to get our feelings out tonight. There is going to be spillover because I think we've got big feels that we need to go through.
Yes.
It has been a long day of watching football. We regret nothing, of course.
It's the best.
But any of that spillover stuff, you can check it out on the Tuesday episode. If you're new here, hello, welcome in. Glad to have you in the Verballerhood. Hit follow, hit subscribe, wherever it is you are watching this here, listening to this here episode. We'd love to have you. Tell a friend if you've been with us for a while. Of course, you can always leave a review or a star rating. All that stuff helps more people find the Verballerhood. By now, you know the drill. Verballers.com is where we've got our premium stuff. You can go out and check out what we've got out there. But yeah, on tonight's show, I think it's just raw reaction. I think it's doing our best to try and sort out how we felt about what we saw on this week 1, Dan.
Fully true. I have bottled up a number of emotions that I'm now shaking up, throwing like Alka-Seltzer, Altoids, anything into the mix to let pour out of me like a volcanic series of feelings eruptions. I didn't want to go somewhere I would regret when I said that. I'm ready, Ty. It's week 1. Let's go, baby.
Let's do it.
We can't have anyone freak out there, okay? We've got to keep our composure.
Week 1.
We've got too far. There's too much to lose. We've got to keep our composure.
Are you going to be able to keep your composure after that Oregon-Idaho game, Dan? Are you going to be able to?
Do you really want to start here? Is this really where you want to begin? Is this where you want the people, not just coast to coast, but internationally, to assume this is where the solid verbal resides intellectually with starting with Oregon, Idaho?
We are not starting with Oregon,
Okay,
Idaho.
good.
I'm just doing like a proof of life test with you because I know we had some Slack chats throughout the day that were interesting with respect to that game. We are not starting there. Why don't we start with Georgia Clemson, Dan? Because that was kind of like the big game to lead off the day at high noon. They played it in Atlanta. It was in tandem with the Penn State West Virginia game, which was in Morgantown, but had a lengthy weather delay because it looked like the apocalypse had shown up and it was raining sideways and windy and black, and it was awful. They eventually resumed that game after a good long time. But Georgia won in resounding fashion, 34-3. Over the Clemson Tigers. As we mentioned on our preview show,
I'm just preparing the meat.
That tenderizes it.
That tenderizes it in a big way. Yeah.
this was indeed a crock potting by the Georgia Bulldogs. And
one of us was able to predict that. Not me. Not I.
Not you. I actually had a very, very healthy week of picks.
You did. You did well.
Which means that next week it's going to fall out of the bottom. But nonetheless, I thought Georgia looked really good once they got rolling. Trevor Etienne was suspended. We talked about that a little bit on the preview show, that was a possibility. I think it tells you everything you need to know that this roster is stocked to the point where they can put a freshman, Nate Frazier, in, who does not even have a headshot on ESPN.com, Dan.
No headshot, no problem.
You can put him in, and he runs for 8 yards a carry, plug and play. No big deal. Against the Clemson defense, mind you, that I think will end up, when all is said and done, being very, very good. But, you know, Georgia just across the board, they hold Clemson to 188 yards. I mentioned this on the Thursday show as well. But if Clemson couldn't run, that was a problem. If you forced Cade Klubnik to throw it a bunch of times, that was potentially a problem. He threw it 29 times. It wasn't a great formula. Under 5 yards per attempt. 31-point win for the Georgia Dogs, Dan.
Yeah, it was for like a fleeting few minutes. If you were a Clemson person, you're like, wow, the defense is making plays, right? The line, Peter Woods, guys just like in Georgia, offensive players' faces, and the Dogs really couldn't get a ton going early on, but it really just seemed like they were sort of game planning in the middle of the game, getting ready for the second half. Like, okay, this is what Clemson's going to do with this kind of look. This is what they're going to do with that kind of look. If I'm a Clemson person in this moment, like, forget the transfer portal, forget like Daboisms, whatever. But like, we're now talking about years of unimpressive offensive play, whether it's like Will Shipley is like the bright shining star that is the exception to this comment, but like, how much more of this do we need to see? Like, it's game one. Everybody improves after game one. But if you spend your entire offseason talking yourself into Clemson's offense finally looking better, like Ty did. TJ Moore, 1 catch, 7 yards. Was that the final line?
Yeah. Was not an impact player in this game, suffice to say.
Let's be clear. Not necessarily reflective of his college career.
No.
But against Georgia, would have been nice to have somebody pop. Nobody pops for the Clemson offense yet again. And so Clemson is going to be this program that measures itself, fair or not, now still against some of the nation's best. And I think that needs to be readjusted, right? Like, they recruit well, right? It's by all means like an A+ run program. Again, say what you will about the transfer portal stuff and the Daboisms, and now's the time to buy stock, et cetera, et cetera. I root for a team who got mauled by Georgia to open up a season. I've been there. I know the feeling. It will get better because Clemson will not play Georgia the rest of the year.
Correct.
That's probably the best thing to come out of this game if you're a Clemson fan. There's no more Georgia on the schedule.
Got it out of the way. Got it out of the way early.
You got it out of the way. That's the neck crack element of all of this. But when you have an entire summer to prepare to score a touchdown, and you can't, and to move the ball impressively once, twice, 3 times down the field, and you can't. You're recruiting against Georgia. The players are considering Georgia and Clemson at the exact same time. And you go to Georgia to succeed. You go at Clemson to hopefully develop into an NFL player on some level. That's kind of where we are right now, because even if Clemson turns around and wins the ACC, we kind of know that it doesn't mean that much coming off of this.
I mean, Clemson deserves the right to improve and learn and get better from
of course
this. And they will, right? They absolutely will. But Georgia does this to a lot of teams, right? I'm not trying to be dismissive of Georgia with this monster win to start the season. I just don't know what else to say about Georgia at this point, because they're both more talented and, in this case, better coached than pretty much everybody else that they play. They're just kind of at critical mass. It shouldn't be a shock to the world that they would go out there and destroy another good team, which I think Clemson will eventually be. So Clemson in that sense is not unique, but 188 yards of total offense is a bit discouraging. I don't think Cade Klubnik's a high-level quarterback, for as much as I've joked about the club level.
Right.
But that's kind of beside the point, right?
But is this a school that a high-level quarterback potentially can turn into a high-level quarterback in actuality?
So here's why I bring this up.
I say probably not.
What I am genuinely curious about is how the Clemson fan base feels about Dabo.
Right.
I've known the answer to that for a while, but I'm just curious in light of this. Did you hear his comment on game day, speaking of Daboisms?
No, maybe.
So he made a comment, and I think it was probably taken a little bit out of context, and I think I get what he was going for with it, but, quote, "It's not about the scoreboard today. It's about how you play."
Yeah.
The meaning, I think, behind that is if you take care of the little things, the big things will take care of themselves, right?
Yes,
That's what he's going for.
It's a process-oriented thing, yeah.
But Dabo, like, he has this weird affinity for putting his foot in his mouth when they put a microphone in front of him. And I'm really curious to know how Clemson fans feel about that in retrospect, because this is something you say when you're a little too committed to your own bit, like doing things the quote unquote right way, or what you think is the right way. In this case, we've done this show since 2008. I'm not much of a takesman. That's just not my thing. But I heard this, and the first 2 words that popped into my head were, "Oh, that's a loser mentality."
Right.
That is not going to go over well if they don't play well, and they did not play well. So, again, I apologize for this guy somewhat in the Clemson preview, and I was big on what they did in the receiver room, and that I don't think that's necessarily changed. This was a good team that they went up against. They might be the national champions.
Sure.
But this is a proud program at Clemson that rightly expects to be a contender year in and year out, that spends to be a contender year in and year out. And that was neither a quote nor a game that let me feel that great about anything. So I'm just, the Clemson people out there, chime in and let me know your thoughts. But I heard that and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, even if he meant something else by it.
Well, it comes down, this is applicable to literally every team in the country, right? That you spend all spring, summer, early fall, whatever, hoping for one thing, no matter who you root for, and it's either very specific or broad growth.
Yeah.
And you get the sense from afar, we're not watching a Clemson program that is capable of growing to what they were before. That they can grow into something more competent in certain ways, but the conversation around Clemson on a certain level seems to be inevitable and heading in a very specific direction. And when you expect growth in a micro sense, macro sense, whatever, and this is what we see, you're like, okay, you're going to do it against Wake Forest, you're going to do it against NC State or Florida State, okay, but let's not keep lumping.
No. Again, Clemson people write in, let me know your thoughts.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm genuinely curious to know what people felt about that quote, and if I'm
totally deflated, as a Clemson fan. To me,
yeah,
I'm not a Clemson fan, but if you were,
yeah. Okay. Speaking of teams that looked impressive, so obviously Georgia, that goes without saying. Let's talk about Miami and Florida.
Guess who just got murdered?
Yeah, 41-17. Miami wins that game on the road in the swamp. My first thought after this was, man, am I happy I picked Miami to win the ACC. Because look at how the landscape's changed now, just in 2 weeks of football, right? We had Florida State. Florida State plays again on Monday. We'll see what happens there. But they lost the game to Tech over in Ireland. Obviously, the Clemson game was, as you said, somewhat deflating. We had Virginia Tech go down on the road at Vanderbilt. NC State struggled until the fourth quarter when they eventually ran away from Western Carolina. So as we look at the ACC landscape and then apply what Miami did to that, you got to feel pretty good if you're a Canes fan, no?
Yeah, but remember, Miami's been here before. Miami's had hot starts before. They've had tantalizing quarterback play before, especially early on in season. Later on, a few years ago with TVD. Last year, early on with TVD against, A&M? They dropped 50-ish, I want to say.
Yeah.
So they've been hurt before. They've been seduced, right? But to do this against a school in state, all the bad blood, all of the recruiting trail stuff, and to do it when everybody's watching in that specific window, right? It was sort of unopposed in the 3:30-ish. It was 3:30 window, right? With the big new weird ESPN SEC score bug.
Yeah. It was funny. It was funny because, you and I talked throughout the course of the day, but never more than when we see a new score bug or a new graphic, right?
Oh, yeah. Got to weigh in. Look, for whatever you think about this SEC ESPN thing, still way better than CBS's Helvetica nonsense. It's just garbage. Just absolute lazy garbage.
Big font guy over here. Continue.
Oh, my God. I have lots of typeface thoughts, Ty. The real ones call it typeface. Anyway, Cam Ward was great. He had an awful throw early, threw it away from his body, running to the left, threw it to the right, whatever. And it was picked off. It was an incredible play. I think it was Shamar James, the Florida linebacker, who picked it off.
Yep.
But otherwise, in concert with Damian Martinez, Xavier Restrepo was everywhere. I think it was Elijah Arroyo at tight end, Cam McCormick, who's, the jokes write themselves. He's in his early 50s, whatever, however old he is. And doing so they were beat up. Like Ruben Bain was out in this game. I think he's been out the next couple of weeks. Miami looked like a big boy team. Miami looked like a team ready for bigger moments, finally. Now, it's game one. Things can change. There are down moments. There are lulls and valleys, whatever. But to do that in that environment, because anytime Florida even got a little bit of momentum, it was Montrell Johnson, that was like the lone thing, the 70-yard touchdown run. Place was rocking. And if I'm a Miami fan in this moment, Lord knows I'm not, but there was pretty nice representation in the swamp. I'm looking at this. I'm like, this is what real teams do. This is what real boys are able to do, right?
Be kind. Be nice to Miami.
No, it's what I'm saying. No,
you should be excited.
This is not me backhanding at all. Like, I am saying immediately, if Miami is able to maintain this level of composure in the face of walls of sound on their schedule, they're going to win a ton of games. Like if the
Yeah.
best of Cam Ward continues, because there will be those lulls. You can win those clunkers, as your shirt points out, right, Ty?
Right.
Merch.solidverbal.com.
Company man, I got the shirt, I got the hat. Yeah, merch.solidverbal.com. Check it out.
There's very few reasons why Miami can't fulfill all of their dreams.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought in watching this was how exciting it was to see a guy like Cam Ward in this Miami offense.
Yes.
And he's played in systems similar, air raidy type systems that are similar to what they're doing at Miami now under Shannon Dawson. But TVD never had this kind of athleticism. And you could see the effect that had on the defense. Yeah, I mean, you have to guard against both the run and the pass, and he's got a live arm. And he does do a little that casual dress James Franklin thing, though, when he's running.
Yes.
Did you see that? And I'm not talking about the coach, James Franklin. I'm talking about the old Mizzou quarterback.
Old Mizzou, yeah. Just sort of standing.
Just kind of like stands upright. And then the word I thought up and tweeted out was just, it's lollygagging is what it is, out of bounds.
It's a groundhog poking a head out of a hole. We're like, what's going on here? Oh, there's somebody up the seam. All right, let's see what's going on.
Somebody's going to go full hit stick on him if he continues that,
Yes.
especially as things get heated later in the year. But suffice to say, I thought his abilities just as an athlete gave that offense a completely new dynamic. What I was trying to figure out, and what I don't think we will know until Miami gets a little bit deeper into this schedule, which, by the way, is a very workable schedule, I should add. I don't know if this is a case of Miami being that good or Florida just not fixing all that ailed it a year ago, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Those big plays, man. I think they gave up the most big plays in the country last year. They were in that conversation.
They really were. I saw our friend David Waters from Gators Breakdown, who we had on the show a couple years ago. He just said, frankly, he didn't know what else to say. Miami demolished them. There was no other way to put it. What I think really would leave me feeling discouraged if I were a Florida fan, knowing all offseason long that the defense was the thing that needed to be fixed. Remember, Billy Napier did like a near full line change of the coaching staff. They plugged in some transfers. They went out. They
lost their best defensive lineman to Ole Miss. Yeah,
lost their best defense.
Yeah,
but I mean, they recruited okay. Like
Sure.
There's definitely been an effort to try and revive that side of the ball. What I found discouraging was how little it seemed like Miami was even trying. You know, like if you watched that Notre Dame Texas A&M game, that was a bit of a war to get any yardage whatsoever because both defensive lines were really, really solid. It didn't feel like Miami was even breaking a sweat against this defense. Certainly not down the stretch as things started to get a little bit out of hand.
Yeah.
And you factor in that this was definitely something that everybody knew about coming into this season. You factor in that this was a game played at the Swamp. Even Vegas thought it was going to be a little bit closer than a 24-point dub for the Miami Hurricanes. It was a 2.5 point spread.
We both had that, though.
We both
I wasn't
had
right
it.
very often, but I had Miami comfortably winning this. Yeah.
So for Miami to boat race them in the manner that they did, I find it very, very discouraging from the Florida side of things.
Yeah.
I'm curious to read kind of the coverage, and I am curious to hear from Florida people as well. It felt like a lot of the same mistakes to me. The untrained Florida observer, it felt like a lot of the same stuff that we have talked about before with missed tackles, dumb penalties, and just no pressure. How many times
line seemed overwhelmed? Graham Mertz was under fire a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like Cam Ward had all day to throw in many instances. He could kind of pick a spot. So it's like Jesse Palmer summed that up, I think, pretty well in the broadcast where he talked about something very similar. It's just, even if you're going to lose, you want to feel like you moved the ball forward, no pun intended. And I don't know if we saw that from Florida in this big opening home spot to open up the 24 season.
The sidearm throws that Cam Ward had was like the scalp scratcher for Jesse Palmer. He's like, he's doing it. There are quarterbacks and there are throwers.
Yeah.
Right? There was stuff like that Jesse Palmer couldn't help but to get out. And at one point, I don't know if it was on the touchdown throw or something that set up a touchdown. It was like, and you can see, you see a little bit of that Pat Mahomes match.
I know. Whenever they
couldn't
try
help
out the
himself.
Pat Mahomes thing, nobody can help themselves with the Pat Mahomes thing.
Yeah.
I will say this about Cam Ward.
I think Cam Ward lost to Stanford last year, scoring 6 or 7 points. Continue.
Yeah, whether it's the arm angle or just sort of like the improbability. So there will be 2 to 3 horrible picks by Cam Ward this year.
Of course.
Really boneheaded plays that I think we all have to look forward to.
But that's the point, though, right? That like Miami
It is.
can overcome if they continue to look like this.
This was the most points ever allowed by Florida in a home opener, and they've been playing for 117 years.
Man.
Not a great look.
I think we know. And you saw the Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen is a big fan of the like retweets of like, oh, interesting. I went to a bunch of big bowl games and they still fired me. That was the Dan Mullen experience watching this game. Continue.
What do you want to do next? We'll do Notre Dame or Penn State?
Let's do Notre Dame A&M.
23-13 Notre Dame wins.
Yes. On the road.
On the road in Kyle Field. It was a big win for Notre Dame. At halftime, I tweeted Mama H, texted Mama H, forgive me, and I said, if Notre Dame can find a way to establish a running game in spite of this offensive line, maybe this team is better than I thought.
Okay.
What happened next surprised even me.
Did they start the freshman left tackle?
They did. Anthony Knapp was the starting left tackle.
Okay.
There were 6 total returning starts along that offensive line. So it was a very, very green unit. They took a ton of penalties. If you watch any of the first half, they were getting blown off the ball. There were missed blocks. There was miscommunication. But when I say what happens next surprised me, the offensive line weirdly grew into the game, which is not.
How are you doing, by the way, watching like the 3-all, 6-all moments in this game?
Oh, I was in a cold sweat the whole game.
Okay.
People were tweeting at me, "Hey, you should tweet more. We'd like to know what you think about this." And I was like, "Nah, I can't even focus enough. My hands are sweating. I'm not going to be able to type anything." It was good.
That's just because you couldn't keep your eyes off of Marcus Freeman's pants.
They're very snug.
Game was tight. Those pants were snug.
Very snug. Needs a shoehorn to get those on. Yeah, I thought the line got better as the game wore on, and as opposed to wearing down, because opposite them was a very, very good Texas A&M defensive line. Don't kid ourselves. They're good. They got better. And so I don't know if that was a scheme thing. I don't know if it was just a youth thing. I think what we'll find by the end of the year is this offensive line is going to be in a completely different spot, because if they showed this kind of improvement from the start of the game to the end of the game in week 1, what does that mean in week 14? Right. I felt really encouraged by that. They grew into the game. They leaned on Riley Leonard as kind of their primary rusher until they were able to open up some holes for Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, both of whom had nice touchdown runs that basically gave Notre Dame the separation they needed in the game. So combined with that chess match, what they did on defense really is what set the tone. You know, Marcus Freeman had the latitude to make some risky calls on 4th down and otherwise, because he knew that the defense was something of a brick wall in this game, especially in the secondary. The line was able to generate some pressure against Connor Wegman and force some bad decisions. 2 picks for Connor Wegman in this game. So I thought this was the kind of game as a Notre Dame fan that we had been waiting to see from a Marcus Freeman coached team. And that is a big game that everybody knows about on the road going into it. They were a slight underdog. So I think to some extent there was an expectation that A&M would find a way to pull it out. A&M's a good team. They're going to be a really good team by the end of the year. But the fact that Notre Dame was able to make these in-game adjustments and get over the finish line and finish strong in the manner that they did, that is the most encouraging thing, especially looking at the schedule now on the Notre Dame side, which is very favorable. And I've talked about it ad nauseum. There is one true road game between this game and the last game, and that, I think, is at Purdue a little bit later on this month. Big old drum.
Yeah.
But otherwise, this is a very favorable schedule with a bunch of teams on there, and they showed the graphic. They should be favored in all of these games. It is there for them now. This was kind of the big hurdle. The fact that they got over it, if they can stay healthy and continue to grow, then sky's the limit, man. I'm super excited.
By the way, speaking of growth, everybody's just hoping for growth. You went through an entire Notre Dame game summary, your emotions, everything, without once mentioning Jared Parker. Look at you, Ty.
Listen, we've all grown a little bit.
New season, new Ty.
We've all grown a little bit in our old age. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw Troy was struggling too, by the way. I haven't seen the final of that game. I'll check it as we're talking here. But
this game was on mute for me. I was watching both the Oregon game, the Michigan game. I had a bunch going at the same time. A&M wise, seemed like tough offensive night. What gives you that hope that A&M will be much better come the end of the season? Is it Elko faith? Is it the better throws that Connor Wegman had? Because he didn't have many good throws.
No.
What is it about what were the squint seeing kernels from this A&M team that should it, because like A&M fans are bummed right now. Obviously, you want to beat Notre Dame at home to open up with a new coach.
Yeah.
What are those kernels that A&M fans should be hopeful about?
Elko's a much better coach than Jimbo.
Yeah.
He's got a ton of talent on hand still, and they are acclimating to new systems. It is not uncommon for a team. I don't care if you're at home. I don't care if you've got veteran leadership. I don't care what the situation is. But whenever you've got a change of regime like that, there is a feeling out period, and you can only go so far in practice. So it doesn't surprise me that this would be what they looked like against a good team, a good defense. I also think Connor Wegman looked out of sync. Like part of the run up to this game was talking about how, the NFL scouts really like what they see out of Connor Wegman. I like Connor Wegman. You and I were super high on Connor Wegman.
Yeah.
I think we still are, but he's been injured and he needs to come back and get more reps to, I think, get back to a point where you can feel comfortable leaning on him. And
I agree.
It just was not there for them tonight. I think just given the supporting cast around him throughout the course of the year with more reps, they're going to get better. And the defense is still going to keep them in games. This is a good defense that we saw. So I just like Elko's made everybody better. Every place he's been, whether he's a coordinator or a head coach, like he has made everybody better. I think it's a fair assumption to assume it's going to get there again with this team. But, it's a lot to ask against a top 10 team, even if you're at home at night, week one. It's just, it sometimes takes a little bit for everything to click.
So speaking of the hope that and your confidence that Connor Wegman is going to be cleaner, do you need to take a quick cold shower before we talk about Drew Aller in Penn State? Andy Kotelnicki, Tom Allen, Abdul Carter. Do we need to think about baseball? Do you want to think about Hippolito Picardo? Is there some sort of early 90s relief pitcher that will calm you down? Or are you just going to wax poetic for the next 3 to 7 minutes?
I'm going to keep the shirt on, even though it's getting a little hotter.
Did I pronounce that correctly, though? It's Hippolito Picardo?
Sure. I think it's Pichardo, but either way, I know who you mean.
Excuse me. I apologize. I know.
Either way, I know who you mean. Yeah, man. First off, this game took forever because of the weather delay. And those games suck to watch. It's a horrible fan experience. But,
right.
Penn State won 34-12 over West Virginia. They're on the road in Morgantown. The point spread came really far down. I think at kickoff it was 7.5. I am a Penn State grad. You can see if you're watching the video, the Beaver Avenue sign behind me. So anybody who has any affiliation to Penn State and has watched this team over the years was eagerly awaiting the unveiling of this offense because Andy Kotelnicki was arguably the hire of the offseason on the coordinator level. One drive in, it already looked better. I was texting friends. I was messaging you. 3 plays in? I was like, this already looks better.
Mm-hmm.
It already looked better. You could see Drew Aller was more confident. He seemed to have better command of what he was doing out there. Nick Singleton got his swagger back.
Yeah.
Nick Singleton was able to start hitting home runs again. They showed the graphic during the broadcast. He had 7 in his freshman campaign of more than 40 yards, 0 last year and 2 in this game. So already they're finding ways to kind of use motion and schemes to create these holes for him.
Harry Wallace?
Yeah, I mean, look, they were able to generate explosion plays in a way that they did not all last season. And you combine that with the defense that looked really tough against the run, was really stout in short yardage situations, Dan. I don't know how either you're a Penn State fan or you're not. It doesn't matter. If you watch that game and if you know the context for where Penn State's been, I don't know how you can come out of that game without feeling higher on Penn State.
Sure.
Because the offense that we saw was leaps and bounds better than a year ago.
It is West Virginia and the West Virginia defense, which I think West Virginia this year will probably continue to be led by its offense and the home run hitters that I think they're still going to have this year.
Yeah.
My question to you, because you were likely going to lose this game, West Virginia people, and I think West Virginia has a lot of upside to be hopeful about. Are you ready to be hurt again as a Penn State human?
I'm not going to play my 10-2 sound.
Is late August enough for you to plant your hurt flag again, Ty?
It's going to happen.
You're exposing your heart in this moment.
I'm ready to be hurt again.
You are ready to be hurt again. Okay.
I'm ready to be hurt.
No
again.
Michigan, no Oregon, I want to say, no Oregon is kind of a bad thing now. If you kind of wanted this Oregon offensive line.
Can we get it? Can we swap them in? Do a hot
I'm
swap?
Penn State, if I'm DD, was it DDL?
Right.
I always forget.
Dennis Sutton.
DDS, excuse me.
DDS.
DDS and Abdul Carter. I'm like, I'll take a crack at that Oregon offensive line.
Yeah, and Abdul was even quiet in this game.
He was. I think he got a lot of attention from West Virginia, to be fair.
He did. If I'm a West Virginia fan, I think my mood coming out of this game is this is kind of a template for what other opponents might try to do to you. And, the fumbles, the short yardage situations that went awry, that obviously that stuff never helps. This is also the first game of the year against the best defense you're going to face all season long. I'm optimistic about this team. I don't see that many defenses that can cap the run the way that Penn State did. But now that there is tape showing Penn State doing that to West Virginia, because they did not get a whole lot of traction on the ground, I think that is what other teams will try to do to them. It's no secret. The cat's out of the bag. So we'll see what it looks like for them moving forward. But I still like Garrett Green. I still like the rushing attack. I still like West Virginia, generally speaking. But the story of this game was Penn State. The offense looked leaps and bounds, as I said, better than it was a year ago.
Are all of your Penn State humans ready to be hurt again? Or are they're protecting themselves a little bit?
Protecting themselves a little bit. Okay. I will say a lot more cautious than optimism.
It's one game. It's August. It's literally still August as we record this for the next, for me, another 28 minutes.
On the old Penn State text thread. Yeah. It's a lot of optimism that is there, but I think afraid to be let out by my friends. I also have to say, and then we have to move on.
Please.
Stellar game from Gus Johnson.
Oh, how'd he do? Any new nicknames?
We had two.
I saw him wearing like a seersucker suit. Was looking sharp.
Was looking very, very sharp. He had Nick the Quick for Nick Singleton, which that's a C- effort, if I'm being honest.
It's not great.
It rhymes, but the big one that I don't think is going to be topped all year, he resorted to calling Andy Kotelnicki the Big Zamboni.
For a specific reason?
There was a story that he talked about where they let Andy Kotelnicki on the Zamboni at like the ice rink.
That's it? That's everything?
That's it. It was like a Thai nickname. I heard it. I was like, that's something I would say.
Like, I can understand if he was like, he's brought in to smooth out this offense. Like, there wasn't.
He did the same thing with Maserati Marv last year, where he used the vehicle that rhymed with, rhyme, but the alliterative effect of the vehicle and the name. And, he didn't use the alliteration this time. He used the vehicle, and, Andy Kotelnicki is a bigger dude. I don't know.
So anyway, so Gus Johnson just goes to like the kids touch a truck and is like the excavator, right? He's just finding trucks to nickname people with vehicles. Okay. I'm okay with that.
34-12 was your final.
Yes.
The other game here that we want to highlight at the top before we move on to finer points, Colorado 31.
Man.
North Dakota State 26. They played this game on Thursday night. How much of this did you watch?
So I didn't watch the first half live. I watched the second half live and went back and watched the first half to be just have my jaw drop to the floor every time Travis Hunter was involved in a play. It was great.
I think he's the best player in college football.
He is the most uniquely talented player in college football. We'll see. There's a lot of teams. There's a lot of games. I'm not ready to say anybody is that person yet, other than Matt Sluka, quarterback, UNLV, transfer in from Holy Cross. Continue.
Right. Who took down
the
Houston Cougars, right?
Willie
27-7?
Something like that, yeah.
I was not impressed with the Buffalo defense. This is not a great secret.
Right.
None of us were impressed with the Buffalo defense a year ago. The hope was that it would get better. Time will tell, I guess. This is a good team in North Dakota State, a well-coached team. But still, it's an FCS offense. And you would hope with all of the dust that Dion has kicked up in the portal, and obviously with some attention to what has been going on the defensive side of the ball, you would expect a little bit more progress there. But they kind of move the ball at will, and especially down the stretch. This is 31-26, Dan. And if you watch the end of this game, Colorado sort of got bailed out by a pass interference call. And then
there was a lot of kind of bailouty moments, but continue.
There were. And then there was that play right afterwards where they got the first down. All they have to do is run the clock out. They decide to throw it, an incomplete pass. North Dakota State ends up getting the ball back, right? So a couple different ways to look at this. On one hand, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, incredibly fun, the offense, electric, quick strike. If that is your vibe, you will love Colorado this year.
Yeah.
It will be a fun team to watch, full stop on offense. But defensively, they leave a lot to be desired. And I want to give a quote out here to Verballer Drew, who sent this in to me. He says, Colorado will lose 2 to 3 games this year from bad clock management. And I don't think he's wrong. And Drew, by the way, is not dunking on Colorado. I think he is generally a fan and rooting for Colorado. But the way that they managed the end of that game, when it seemed as if North Dakota State still had momentum and was playing whistle to whistle.
Right.
There's a little bit of crystal ball in that, wasn't there?
The explanation, so what you're referring to is Shedeur Sanders threw the ball when Colorado had the opportunity to clock the game out, right? That just finished, run the ball. North Dakota State does not have the timeouts to stop the game, plural timeouts, in any sort of meaningful way. Keep running the ball, clock ticks off, Colorado wins, on to Nebraska. And the explanation for why Shedeur Sanders threw the ball deep was we had one-on-one and we didn't really have it, and so we really wanted to get that pass. Like,
okay,
that's not good enough. Sorry, guys, right? Because obviously North Dakota State was 5-6 yards away from winning that game after the Hail Mary, right?
They caught it. They caught the Hail Mary.
They caught the Hail Mary, right? Don't give a good team, which I assume North Dakota State is probably going to be a good team this year. Don't give them any air. Don't give them oxygen. Win the game. Live to fight another day. It was insane. It was an insane reason. Everybody that is listening has likely played a college football video game, has likely watched enough of these games to be like, okay, 35 seconds, 80, okay, just it's game over. Yeah. That's
exactly what I thought when I watched that. This is something that I would do and lose if I were playing the video game. Because I don't have patience and I'm not, I hate being that guy that just sort of runs the clock. I got to try and get some extra yards so my guys don't transfer.
Right.
But this is, well, maybe that's true at Colorado. Who knows? But
right.
Yeah, it was poorly managed down the stretch. They got the win against a good team. They didn't cover, but who cares? They go to Nebraska.
Yeah. That
game next week will be, I'm sure, very much in the public eye, given some of what Dylan Raiola, we'll talk about Dylan Raiola a little later. But I don't know. I came away feeling a bit underwhelmed, hoping for more on the defensive side.
Can I excuse a little bit of all of these teams? I like to, my week 1 disclaimer and week 0 disclaimer, it's first game. First game. You get an opportunity for the first time to see all of your players that you intend to play in live action. And so everybody is going to become a team that's closer to their final product in a much more dramatic way this week and on and on. So whatever Colorado's deficiencies are on defense or in game management from the sideline, whatever any of these teams' deficiencies are, it's now on tape. And coaches can get better. Teams can get better. Everybody can improve. And it's like, oh, this linebacker is not going to play for us that much anymore. This left guard is not going to. Or like, oh, this guy flashed. We got to get him on the field more. So that's one of those great things about week 1 that teams will grow.
We've got a bunch more to talk about.
Yes.
I cannot hold off on playing the reverbs until the end of the show.
All right.
We got great reverbs. Our guy Shay, Verballer Shay, did an awesome job cutting these up, putting them together, capturing the spirit of the Verballer hood in week 1. I want to play them now. Then we're going to continue talking about the games in a new segment. But let's hear it. Here are your week 1 reverbs. Have a listen.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
This is Kevin in DC.
Hey, this is Dan in Minneapolis.
Hey, this is Brandon. NDSU had chances. I'm proud of our team. I think Colorado is on watch. Their defense was leaky.
Just watched my Georgia Bulldogs crock-pot the crap out of a clearly outmatched Clemson team. Dado, stay in the ACC because you don't want any more of this SEC smoke. Go Dogs.
College football's back, baby. I'm ready to be heard again. Pitt wins big to nobody. Hail to Pitt. Let's go college football.
Hey, guys, I learned a new drinking game today. Every time I remember that Virginia Tech plays football, I take another shot of corn whiskey.
I just got done watching Iowa score 40 points in football. Is it time again to talk to your kids? No, sorry, it's 2024. It's time to TikTok to your kids about Iowa.
As a West Virginia fan, the highlight for me was the hot mic 52 seconds into the fourth quarter.
Ty, in the offseason, you compared Dylan Raiola to Paul Atreides. Well, as a Nebraska fan, I am fully ready to say Lisan Al-Gaib. Go Big Red.
TJ in Cleveland, your resident Syracuse fan. We may have gotten a quarterback.
Listen, I don't think the MAC is ready for a CMU team capable of scoring 66 points. Get the word out that the chips are back.
Shane Beamer needs to be fired. This team is going to be 16th out of 16th. The experiment is over, and it's ready to be done.
Hey, we always talked about win your clunkers, right? Oregon found a way to win a clunker tonight. However, I'm going to drink a copious amount of alcohol to deal with the fact that we just beat Idaho by 10.
Look, I became a Notre Dame fan tonight because I bet on them to win the game. And I got to ask all you Notre Dame fans, how do you live like this?
But it's not all bad news for South Alabama fans, no. One Gio Lopez got rave reviews from Chippendales for his stripping throughout the game and will make a fine male stripper next year.
Shay here, Reverbs editor and Fresno State superfan. I'm sitting here watching all the calls roll in, and I'm wondering, where are all the Michigan calls? That was a big win over the #1 team in all of the group of 5 tonight. I'm super proud of my Bulldogs and how they hung in there at the Big House. It's going to be a great year.
WSU drops the 70 bomb. Oregon State comes out with a W. That's the pack. Tua, keep winning them things.
I have been waiting 8 months for this day. I've got a fresh Bloody Mary. My kids are watching Paw Patrol. And I've got 4 games on Multiview. God bless America. Get up. It's game day, baby.
Awesome batch of reverbs. Thank you to everyone who called in.
That was great.
We obviously cannot fit everybody into a 3-minute and 13-second segment, but keep on calling. We'll be doing this every week, and thanks to Shay for doing a good job mixing all of those up. Fire Shane Beamer, huh?
I mean, look, it's when you watch South Carolina struggle with Old Dominion, which, by the way, a lot of teams struggle with ODU to start the year, right? We've seen teams on the Eastern Seaboard struggle.
Who among us has
Who
not?
among us? But when you watch that, when you watch Lenora Sellers throw for 3.5 feet or whatever it was per throw, and then watch Diego Pavia take down, kind of single-handedly, take down Virginia Tech in Nashville, you're like, well, where's our Diego? What?
Yeah.
Why can't we have a Diego? And so that's the issue with South Carolina struggling with the Monarchs. The mighty Monarchs, Ricky Ronnie?
Ricky Ronnie. 23-19 was the final.
And I guess Brent Pry going down is part of my analogy or whatever it was, my comparison. Yes. So South Carolina wins, but in not super impressive fashion.
You want to do some role playing? It's late at night.
I would love to do some role playing. Sure.
Role play.
If I'm not me, who the hell am I?
So here's what we're doing. We're going to put ourselves in the shoes of various fan bases.
Okay.
In light of what we saw in week 1, Dan.
Yes.
I've got a list in front of me. You've got a list in front of you. Do some role playing here.
I'm ready.
Pick a fan base and tell me how you feel.
Of anybody in the country right now?
Anybody, yeah.
If I'm a Michigan fan right now, just because we just heard from Shay about Michigan Fresno State, I'm feeling a little bit teeth gritty. Is that an adjective?
Teeth gritty?
I'm gritting my teeth a little bit thinking about what this schedule might look like, especially they have Texas next week. Like defense is going to be incredible. Will Johnson's going to be incredible all year long. This defensive line is going to be incredible all year long. But the experience of Davis Warren and Alex Orji against the Texas defense, against the Oregon defense, against the Ohio State defense, against the better looks that Michigan is going to have, I would grit my teeth a little bit preparing for like a real tough, even if Michigan wins, some tough watches ahead. That's what I have.
That Fresno game was tougher than the final score indicates.
It was close. Yeah.
The final score is 30-10. They had a pick six late.
It was a 16-10 game in the second half, I believe, right?
Yeah. And look, week one being what it is, I think Fresno's a good team.
Yeah.
In their own right. But yeah, Michigan's got some sorting out to do with the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Davis Warren got the start. Davis Warren, a great story, but a former walk-on. We had been led to believe for most of the offseason that it was Alex Orji's job to lose. Alas, he does not get the gig. He doesn't get the gig, presumably because Sharon Moore had the same questions we did about whether the guy can throw.
Right.
And so he got in a little bit, but it was Davis Warren's team in week one, and we'll see if any of that changes moving forward. But interesting circumstance for Michigan now in their own title defense with a lot new in Ann Arbor.
What do you have?
Minnesota.
Okay. If you're a Minnesota fan, how you feeling?
So Minnesota lost 19-17 on Thursday to North Carolina. Missed field goal at the gun on Thursday night. The game was infuriating. If I am a Minnesota fan, I am fit to be tied because Minnesota had so many chances to win that game, Dan, and they could not seal the deal.
At home.
At home. I was not impressed at all with Max Brosmer.
Oh, no. After all of that?
After all that for that, people were tweeting in and saying, bros before nose? How about bros before doze? That's how it felt.
Yeah.
It was rough. At least through 3.5 quarters. End of the game, he sort of came to a little bit, but it hurt. It hurt to watch that. If I'm a Minnesota fan, I am starting to wonder how much this problem is due to PJ Fleck and not a quarterback thing or anything. Is this a PJ Fleck thing? Because it's been a minute since this offense was any good.
Right.
This is year 8 now.
It's North Carolina.
Under Fleck. It's North Carolina,
a
defense that hasn't done anything in an eternity.
Yep.
The peak for this offense was back in 2019, and it's gotten progressively worse over the last 4 years. That 2019 team, by the way, had who? Tanner Morgan.
Sure.
2 good backs, 3 good wide receivers. Also, Kirk Shiraka. I remember talking about it at the time. That was an offense that had dudes and was crazy efficient.
Yep.
So he leaves. He goes to Penn State in 2020. Kind
Joe
of a
Rossi's
disaster.
Gone. Yeah.
Joe Rossi's gone. Kind of a disaster on the Penn State side. This isn't a Penn State conversation. But Minnesota just has not gotten back to the same levels of efficiency since he left, even after trying to bring him back for a second tour of duty. It's just they haven't had the same amount of talent. And that's part of why Max Brosmer was so exciting. Because say what you will, say what I will about how he looked in week 1, but this is a guy that other programs wanted. It's not like, this is the diamond in the rough. No one's ever heard of this guy. He was the leading FCS passer. He had options beyond Minnesota. So all the offseason hype about trying to make this offense better, trying to revitalize the passing game, and this is what you get. This is what you get. It did not look good. And I just wonder if this is a Fleck thing and not a quarterback thing or a scheme thing, or if it's just like a roster construction thing and a philosophical thing, that isn't going to be resolved until they've got a different coach.
If I'm an Oregon fan.
Oh, no.
Which I am. I'm feeling not so good. I'm feeling not so good, Ty. I happen to also be feeling not so good in the moment. I don't know if you can tell in my voice.
Yeah.
Oregon, for a long time, has had a very good offensive line. Just no matter who is back there protecting, no matter who the quarterback is, whether it was Mario Cristobal recruiting really great offensive linemen. Penei Sewell was one of those guys. Jackson Powers Johnson, now off to the NFL, one of those guys. Really, really solid history of quality offensive lines. They were not good. And they were not good against Idaho. All due respect to Idaho.
The
Vandals have
Vandals.
been pretty good since making the move. They're now in the Big Sky. Dylan Gabriel is not tall. I don't know if you have the breaking news sound. But a subpar offensive line performance, especially on the inside, and they're a little bit beat up there, coupled with a not super tall quarterback who they probably didn't feel great about the line protecting him long enough to throw it downfield, because he basically didn't throw it downfield. He threw the ball 50 times and played the entire game against Idaho. I had Oregon winning the Big Ten. I believe I had Oregon winning the national championship. They might improve to a really impressive place on offense. They had the most efficient scoring offense in America last year, points per drive. It was a rough watch. It was a rough rough watch. The defense for Oregon should be very good.
Yeah, it's kind of indefensible.
It's game one. It applies to everybody. They're going to improve. They have Ashton Genty, who ran for 7 miles against Georgia Southern this coming week at Autzen Stadium, I believe, at night. They need to get real good on offense because if they're constantly punting, or if they're just not figuring it out, or they're not putting it in the end zone, it's gonna be a long night against Boise State, which I did not anticipate saying after the Idaho game. The Idaho
did not
All
expect
due respect to the Vandals.
Did not expect the blood pressure to go up watching the Idaho game.
I didn't expect to watch most of the second half.
Yeah,
it was awful. It was the worst game relative to opponent by a country mile of the Dan Lanning era at Oregon.
I can relate to Virginia Tech fans out there.
Yeah.
Right now. I've been in that position where you lose a game in week one after an off season of hype, after it feels like you came into this season with real momentum at the end of last.
Yeah.
And then,
can I tell you what it is? The Clark Knight rises. You see? Gus Johnson, take notes. I'm out here giving you bangers.
You need a vehicle. He only does vehicles these days.
I know, that's true.
It was really tough to watch Virginia Tech in this game. They got off to a really slow start. They were down 17-0. We can talk about Diego Pavia in a second. But to be down early, to get off to a slow start, to come all the way back to the point where it feels like you might have a shot to win and then lose in overtime is just gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
I have been there. That sucks. I'm still somewhat high on Virginia Tech, but we both liked Vandy in this game to at least cover. You took them outright.
Yep.
What I think bothers me the most if I'm a Virginia Tech fan, and what they need to fix, the play calling was super conservative, man. It was almost like, and I hate this more than anything, when you've got teams that act like they're playing not to lose. That's how it felt.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like they were playing not to lose. They didn't want to take any chances. I don't know. That was bothersome to me to watch, and I hope they get it resolved because, again, the ACC could be kind of a tire fire, truly, given what we know now.
Can't wait.
Week and a half into the year, it could be a big old hot mess. Even Miami could drop one. They've got that in them. We know it. So it's still there for Virginia Tech. This obviously was not a conference game, but if I'm a Virginia Tech fan, I've got that pit in my stomach right now going to bed, and it's rough. That's a rough one.
Hell, if I'm the rest of the SEC, knowing Diego's coming, baby.
Beware Diego.
I've got that pit in my stomach. They got Zerbiak. Virginia Tech got Zerbiak. One-man show. Took him down. It was great to watch, especially if you're a Vanderbilt fan. If you're all anchor down all the time. Great way to start the season. Seeing Jerry Kill on the sideline there. The other Tim Beck called a nice day for the Doors.
Yeah,
really nice day.
The other thing here too is not to be all Debbie Downer on things. I'll cast like a shining light of sorts.
Yeah.
If I'm an Ohio State fan, of course you're happy to win. You drilled Akron.
Yeah.
52-6, they put up 50. They didn't cover that spread, I don't think. They only got 46.
Yeah.
I would be ecstatic about Jeremiah Smith.
Oh,
Absolutely
yeah.
ecstatic.
I mean, nothing. That's no change. Yeah.
It's no change, but the guy's a true freshman. It's a loaded receiver room. The fact that he broke into the starting lineup already from day one is telling. Led the team with 6 for 92, had 2 touchdowns. What I found most impressive about him was body control. All right, now we're doing role play here.
You've said that about me before, too. Continue.
We're doing role play. We're talking about body control. Forgive me.
No, that's okay.
But listen, the back shoulder touchdown that he caught earlier in the game, his ability to kind of know where the ball was and turn last second to catch it and not give away what was happening to the defender is not really something you could teach, or at least not something you learn until you're a junior at Ohio State. All right. His ability to do that was incredible. The thing that impressed me the most, though, was the touchdown he caught over the middle later in the game, where he almost slowed down to kind of shield the defender who was chasing him from behind. He just has a really good sense of spatial awareness. And that's what you look for in a receiver. That's instinctual. That is not something you can teach. To add him into this receiver room, I was watching this kid, and I'm like, he might be the best receiver on the roster right now. And they've got really good receivers already.
Sure.
He just seems so wise beyond his years, so physically gifted beyond his years that you should be terrified if you got to try and figure out how am I going to cover Jeremiah Smith on top of Emeka Igbuka on top of Carnell Tate. It's just a murderer's row of receivers coming at you. And, we can talk about Will Howard at some point, but it's incredibly loaded out wide.
All right. Well, I hope for your sake that Jeremiah Smith signs your poster when you go to the next media day. You're like, Jeremiah,
love him like a brother,
question,
man.
Ty Hildebrand, solid verbal. Have you always been this handsome? Yeah. Okay. No, you're absolutely right. I wouldn't say the Ohio State offensive line fully unclunked itself in that first half, and dealing with some injuries, dealing with some new faces, obviously, but something to monitor. But you're nitpicking. They eventually blew out Akron, but it was a slow start, and that's okay. It's week 1.
I have 2 other ones here real quick.
Please, I'm
3
ready.
Other ones, I guess. If I'm an Oklahoma State fan, I am breathing a huge sigh of relief because that was a good team.
Yeah.
That was a good team in South Dakota State, 2-time defending FCS champions. This was a professional effort from Oklahoma State. There was no sacks allowed, no turnovers, good games for Ollie Gordon, for British comedy legend Alan Bowman.
Yeah.
It did take a little bit to get going, but in the end, it was a 24-point win. The game felt like it could be a spot where in the past we've seen Oklahoma State lay an egg.
Sure.
We've seen them have
seen early struggles. Yeah.
We've seen them put up a dud. And the point spread made it seem as if this could be a closer game. This was not. They dominated.
Yeah.
So good on them. If I'm an Iowa fan, I am very cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
Very cautiously
Nice second
optimistic.
half. Caleb Johnson did a nice job.
The final score, 40-0, is great. The first half score of 6-0 was a soccer match.
Yeah.
And was not great, and was the punchline of Twitter for a hot minute. The defense is still sound. The defense, again, set the tone. They did take a little bit to get going, but once they did, it looked better. We will see what they look like next week against Iowa
Is
State.
Illinois State? Is that what?
Illinois State this week.
Yeah.
Iowa State next for the
Yeah,
Cyhawk.
Cyhawk, yeah.
So it's going to get real in a hurry.
Yeah.
And not to steal your dude thunder, which we
Please
will get
do.
to.
I was making
but
them in high school. Continue.
If I am a Boise State fan right now,
Boise,
I feel like we're the best G5 team.
Well, maybe best G5 offense. Sure.
Maybe the best offense.
Yeah, or team. No, I think you're right.
I don't know about the defense. I kept thinking to myself, man, this would be a hell of a game if Boise played App State. What would the over-under be for that game? It'd be like 84.
Or Abilene Christian, apparently.
Abilene Christian, who took Texas Tech to the wire and almost won that game. So 644 yards for Boise's offense. in
Yeah,
this game.
2 big back performances. Ashton Genty, what did you say? It was 247?
267 and 6
267.
rushing touchdowns. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. We talked about him. We did a video about him in the offseason. There's a snowplow named after him in Boise for a reason. He is an all-American caliber running back. Everything you believe him to be, he is. And so can't wait to see how he fares next week against a much better front in Oregon, in Eugene. But incredible. By the way, if I'm an NC State fan,
oh no,
I am. I'm ex-Haley is the adjective I'm using. Where I just like somebody's like, oh, what'd you think of NC State, Western Carolina? You're like, okay, they won, right? You're starting every thought with a real deep exhale.
Yeah.
And that, like, yeah, Grayson McCall, maybe not the greatest arm, left some, passing yardage out there, and like defense left a little bit to be desired, stopping the run a little bit. But Casey Concepcion is so good. The receiver should be really good. Your guy Jordan Waters is an absolute beast in that backfield. There's so much to be optimistic about. You just hope, one just hopes, I don't care if NC State wins or not, but like, I want them to win big games and not lose stupid games because I like novelty, right? I want something new. We have, Stanford, Cal, and SMU joining things in the ACC. To me, it's more novel if NC State doesn't lose an absolute dud or 3 this year.
That
would be
MO.
That would be interesting. And so got a little scared watching that Western Carolina game for a minute.
That's been their MO. And again, look, if the ACC does devolve into a hot mess, they're another candidate to find a way into a conference championship game.
Of course.
All right. Any other fan bases you want to role play, or should we move on?
I mean, I think Nebraska and Tennessee are equally hot and heavy.
Oh, well, hold on to that thought. Let's move on.
Okay.
Odoriferous, olfactinal nominations.
Pick 6.
Odoriferous, ophalactigil emancipations.
I have picked out 6 new starting quarterbacks from this past weekend.
Yes.
And since I know you want to come up with spicy adjectives, I thought maybe you could give me the first word that comes to mind. Let's play a little word association, all right?
Yeah.
Nico Iamaleava.
You nailed it. You know what? I took a shower in the middle of the day today, and I just routinely Iamaleava. See, I nailed it mostly.
It may be Iamaleava, but either way, we're really close, and I think we get bonus points for that.
I heard Iamaleava during the game.
Okay, we'll go with that. That's
all I can say.
I spent an entire offseason trying to perfect that cadence.
Yeah.
Give me one word to describe Nico.
Well, if you're a fan or just in general?
Just in general.
Because I had
from
a
your
buzz.
seat as a popular co-host of this here show.
I had buzzing.
Yeah.
He's just buzzing. There is like an energy to him and what he is able to do and what his athletic ceiling appears to be. Now, who they play today? Chattanooga?
69-3 they won.
Yeah, nice. Still buzzing. Still, you cannot take away the electricity that is surrounding me when I think about Nico right now if I'm a Tennessee fan. So I'm saying buzzing, absolutely. Just his arm talent, his athleticism, what his ceiling appears to be, buzzing.
Mine was different.
Yeah.
Different. He looks different. He does. He looks like a pro quarterback. Not
6'6"?
just because he's big, but because he feels like he's got command of things. At one point, he was 10 for 10, finished with 314, 3 touchdowns. Obviously, they won in resounding fashion, but there's good reason to be high on this kid, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in this system. So that's one. Let's go to Dylan Raiola next then.
Okay.
Give me your Dylan Raiola word.
All right, my Dylan Raiola word was ready. Okay? And that is it's going 2 different directions, right? He looks ready for college football. And this is what, UTEP? Scotty Walden with his hair on fire, UTEP?
Your guy. You love Scotty Walden.
I love Scotty Walden. I love energy, Ty. I love commitment. He looks ready, and there is something about, from afar, the Nebraska fan experience that they have suffered. I think Nebraska has gone the longest of any Power 5 program, now Power 4 program, without making a bowl game. We're at a 7-year streak. Like, even Vandy is like 5 years right now. Colorado's 3 or 4. 7 years, Nebraska fans are ready. He is ready. They are ready for each other. They're ready to settle down. They are ready to find a nice little hamlet on Nantucket together. Ready. Yeah. That's what I have.
I have revealing.
Okay.
And it's not all that different from what you just described here, but he looked really good. And I just was thinking back to, especially since they brought in the backup for a good chunk of the second half. And I just kept thinking, wow, the contrast between having an actual good quarterback and whatever kind of quarterback play they had a year ago has never been on greater display. That contrast to me stuck out like a sore thumb. He had 2 first-half touchdown passes, no interceptions. We will clearly see him play against better competition. But, again, ready's a good word. Revealing's a good word. It's just he does seem like he is ready for this moment. I'm sure he will take his lumps. But if you're a Nebraska fan, I think you're pretty excited still. He has done nothing to throw cold water on some of that optimism.
Correct.
Diego Pavia, Dan Rubenstein. Give me a word.
Godlike. Again, you got to think about the context. Like, if you are one of the 387 absolute diehard Vanderbilt fans that are out there, I have no idea what that number is. Diego Pavia coming in, knowing that he does nothing but beat Auburn, which is on the schedule, right?
Yep.
In 8 or 9 weeks or something. And then to beat Virginia Tech to start the season, right? That the vibes are at an all-time high right now, or all-time recent high. That doesn't make any sense. But yes, godlike is the adjective for Diego Pavia, that there is that savior-type element in a way that no college football player should be considered a savior about anything, but relative to where Vanderbilt's been recently. Yeah, that's my answer.
I have menacing.
Yeah, that's good.
Dude's a menace. 12 of 16 passing, ran it 26 times, 104 yards. Close to 300 total yards. They built the whole plane out of Diego Pavia. They may continue doing that for as long as he stays healthy. And you know what? That might be the best game plan that Vandy's had in a good long time. So good on him.
Yeah.
Tyler Van Dyke, give me a word.
Prompt. He was there when the game started. He went out on the field every time he was asked to. I don't know. Like stopgap. That's not an adjective.
Inconsistent.
But yeah.
It's inconsistent. We don't need to get overly creative with this. They won the game. Wisconsin did 28-14 against Western Michigan.
And some of what ails Wisconsin is not on him, right? They haven't recruited receivers in a way that you would feel confident that they could build a modern offense with. So like I like Tretch Kekahuna. I pronounced that wrong. I like Will Pauling. Like these guys are good, but like in terms of true pop, when you have who next week, Ty? When you have Jalen Milroe averaging 25 yards per attempt and Ryan Williams averaging 87 yards per catch, beating who they beat? TJ Finley in Western Kentucky by 60.
Yeah,
63-0. Was that the final score?
I
got to figure out some points. You got to figure out where those points are coming from, even if you get some stops.
Yeah, I mean, he was good later in the game, but he had to. They needed a drive to put the game on ice. But other than that, pretty inconsistent.
Yeah.
Again, I've got two more here.
Okay.
Davis Warren. We mentioned him earlier. Davis Warren got the nod at Michigan.
Yeah.
Over Alex Orji, former walk-on. Again, really good story. Go check out his backstory. They won this game 30-10. A win's a win. You'll take it. They were super conservative with this.
Yeah.
Super conservative. So my word was surprising because I genuinely did not expect he was going to be the guy. We had heard some smoke around that the deeper we got into this past week because notably they didn't name a starter. And they were very coy about, is it going to be Alex Orji? Is it going to be somebody else? The fact that they gave it to Davis Warren in the end was surprising to me. I don't think the game plan was all that surprising given the fact that clearly they're still trying to run what they did like last year or even 2 years ago, where it's very focused on the ground and they're going to use the quarterback sparingly. Maybe he can work in that system, but to your point of week 2 opponents, Texas is coming to town. And that's going to be difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I have like default, right? That Davis Warren was sort of the choice by default. That's not an adjective either. It's a word, though. That he was there. Maybe he has more comfort in this offense because he's been around for a while now. That they felt better about him throwing fewer picks. Whatever the reason was, he was just sort of the selection by default. And, you know, it's sort of like the Cade McNamara sensation. Like, they won a lot of games with Cade McNamara, but you knew the ceiling was relatively low. And I think that we're in a similar situation now.
Final one, Jackson Arnold. We haven't talked much about Oklahoma. Oklahoma played on Friday night. They pounded Temple 51-3. Only 141 passing yards, Dan.
Yeah, and Jaleel Farouk went down early, who was one of the main targets, and he's out, 6 to 8 weeks with a broken foot. So you understand that, like, game plan is thrown off a little. Yeah, between him and Max Johnson, there was some pretty, like, awful injuries. At least, hopefully, we get to see Farouk again this year. Jackson Arnold is TBD, is what I have with him. The best of Jackson Arnold is tantalizing. It's really interesting. He's a playmaker. He's gutty. There were some third downs that weren't great. It seemed like there were some communications issues at times. Again, it's Temple. It's week 1. I'm not going to judge Jackson Arnold that on such a crazy curve right now. You can see it. You can squint and see a really impressive season from Jackson Arnold. I'm just not crazy about everything that surrounds him on this offense, especially in front of him on that line.
So 141 yards, but 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
3 of which went to Deion Burks, the Purdue transfer. My word is psychic.
Okay.
And perhaps I am taking an overly optimistic view of Jackson Arnold, but there were a couple throws that I saw in this game where it seemed apparent that he processed the coverage so quickly that you almost had to wonder if they were radioing it into him mid-play or if he knew beforehand what was coming. Because he just, and this is what I called out when we did our previews, Dan, Oklahoma fans last year were excited to get him in there because in limited action with what we saw of Jackson Arnold, he did possess that ability to process the game very quickly.
Yep.
And again, I think we saw that.
He knew where that entire Arizona secondary was when he was throwing it to them.
He did.
Again
he
and
did.
again and
Absolutely.
again. Yeah.
But I just there were throws in that game on Friday where it felt like he just had such a good command of what the defense was doing. I know it was just Temple, but it just felt to me like he's really good at understanding what is in front of him, and if he can match up the throws and all the physical attributes with the mental game, which I think he's really good at, Oklahoma could have a really, really good quarterback on their hands.
Yeah, I'm curious about this offense. I'm curious what this actual offense looks like against, obviously, a very difficult schedule, a more difficult schedule than what they're used to. You know, he's just like of the wrong era almost at Oklahoma, that with all these receivers, with all these NFL offensive linemen, with Lincoln Riley calling things, we'll see with how this works out with this new era. But yeah, the best of him, I think, is going to be very good. I just don't think we're going to see that many cartoonish number games from him. We'll see.
Only other thing I have here is a little segment we like to call the Dude Alerts, Dan.
Please.
So Dude Alerts, the segment. We got the music back, by the way.
Of course.
Dude Alerts is the segment where we give out shout-outs, awards to incredible performances throughout the course of a year. Sometimes we retire dudes. My hunch is that some of the names on this list will be retired before long, but you got the list. You put out the tweet. What did people send in? What did you decide to go with, Dan? Who are our dudes for week one?
All right. I have, of course, Ashton Genty, Cam Ward, Miami quarterback, Diego Pavia. We've mentioned his name a million times. Nate Frazier, Travis Hunter, the Notre Dame secondary. It was what?
Yeah.
Ben Morrison and Cyrus Gray are the starters at corner?
Ben Morrison. Yeah, Ben Morrison is the big name, yeah.
Yeah. I have here Kyle McCord, who had a really nice day for Syracuse. And, yes, they only played Ohio, but, Syracuse is a program that can lose to Ohio, right? The best of Ohio. And I think they did a really nice job on offense. He threw the ball a bunch. The receivers seemed to pop for Syracuse. So I'm including Kyle McCord there. Will Johnson, just all over the place for Michigan. Drew Aller. Noah Burnett for North Carolina.
Oh, the kicker.
Your guy. This was your contribution.
Man, I have never seen so many instances in 1 week of college football where coaches were content settling for three.
Yeah.
And not just like a 28-yard chip shot. Let's get into position for a 48-yarder and feel good about it.
Yeah, let's get Noah ready.
What year is this that now suddenly this is okay? And yeah, North Carolina was able to use that to great effect. I mean, their kicker was booting them through. By the way, it's Christian Gray. I think you said Cyrus. Former Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Former Texas A&M back. Christian Gray, yeah, for the Notre Dame secondary. Continue.
No, those are my dudes. I just wanted to mention a couple of other, results just because I felt great about it. Northwestern didn't fall into Lake Michigan, and that made me very happy because we're going next week, Ty.
We'll be there on Friday, right?
Taking down Chuck Martin, spiritual friend of the show, not actual friend of the show, but we like Chuck Martin a good deal. We're going to be there Friday. There's a whiteout, Ty. I learned, so bring a white shirt
from
with
home,
you.
Baby. Yeah.
Yeah, Northwestern took down the MAC champ, Ty. I feel great about that. Mikey Wright on his journey, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, now to Evanston. It's great. Who else you got? Anything else that made you feel things, Ty, this week?
UNLV winning over Houston, actually.
Yeah.
I think we both picked UNLV in that game.
We did, because of the Holy Cross connection, but yes.
Because of the Holy Cross connection, which didn't necessarily lead to crazy production, but UNLV with the win.
Yep.
Nevada did beat Troy.
Okay.
And I think it's worth mentioning because Nevada was one of those teams when we did the preview, we kind of talked openly about them being one of the worst teams in college football. The rebuild ahead of them, they've got a new coach. We saw in week one, they fought valiantly. They lost, but fought valiantly in week one. I think punched above their expectations to some extent.
Put him in a chote hold. Jeff Choate in the chote hold.
It was the chote hold. And now to beat Troy, I think the game was at Troy. That is a really, really big win for that program. And it may emphasize, I have to go back and check the tapes on what Jared Parker did with that Troy squad. It may emphasize some of the pessimism I had about that head coaching hire, but big win for the Wolfpack, man. I like it.
As do I. I think that's everything I have. I don't think there was anything else. I mean, Georgia Tech won again, so their warpath continues to ACC dominance.
Yep.
They beat Georgia State, I believe. So it's all happening for the Ramblin' Wreck, Ty. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it.
There are some games that are going on as we are recording this. There's Arizona against New Mexico. Notably, that game has a ton of points. It's midway through the third quarter at time of recording here.
Yep.
We will cover this game. We will cover the Sunday night and the Monday night games on our Tuesday episode. The Tuesday episode is intended to kind of level set, get us back to square one and prep for week 2, but also handle some of the spillover stuff that we didn't get a chance to talk to today. So for those members who are out there listening to us from our Patreon community, we will be posting some stuff for the premium Verballers to help guide that show and craft what types of things we're discussing, what types of spillover things we need to unpack a little bit more. But in the meantime, Dan, I think that does it for the
Can I add a dude real quick?
recap.
Real quick? Can I add a dude?
Please.
At time of recording, with 7 minutes and change left in their game against New Mexico, Teteroa McMillan has 7 catches for 248 yards. He is averaging 35 yards per catch. I just felt like I had to include that, Ty. Like, I don't want people looking back when this show is dug out of the Smithsonian archives after a nuclear winter. We're like, oh, weird. That show aligns with when T-Mac had 718 yards receiving against New Mexico, and they didn't mention it. I just want to be on the record. T-Mac
Yeah,
is a
nobody's
dude.
playing defense in this game.
No. That's it.
Arizona against New Mexico. So that does it. Again,
Yes.
hit follow, hit subscribe if you've yet to do so. We'd appreciate it. We'd love to have you with us.
Go out of your way.
Throughout the course of this season. Verballers.com is where you can go and get in on our Pick'em game, which is going to continue going on throughout the course of the year. We reset it each week with new prizes, fabulous prizes. $500 gift card was on the line in week 1. We will have better and more exciting stuff throughout the course of the season, I promise you. But go and check that out at verballers.com in addition to the other perks and benefits that we offer the people that support us. Merch.solidverbal.com.
It looks so good, Ty.
I
It
got the
looks
hat.
so good.
I got the shirt. My wife wants to steal the hat. I'm not going to let her. Don't tell her.
Different colors. There's a new letdown look ahead sandwich shirt.
Yep.
There are 3 new designs of shirts. There's a couple of hats. There's drinkware. It's looking real nice.
It's looking really, really sharp. So check that out. We put a lot of energy into that in the off season.
Yes.
And I guess beyond that, Dan, it was fun as always to do this show with you.
Week 2 is going to be so damn fun. I can't wait.
Week 2 is going to be loaded, packed to the brim.
I'll be watching Ashton Ginty running through the Oregon defense as we record this show. I think it's at 9:30 p.m. Central, 10:30. It's a late kick.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
We got Michigan, Texas. We have all across this great land. A ton of great matches.
Cyhawk game, yes. Week 2 is loaded.
It's
Week
great.
2 is absolutely loaded. We will get to that in due course. That'll be on the Thursday preview. Before we get there, though, we've got a Tuesday show, that we need to tie up some loose ends with what happened in week 1 and start planning ahead for week 2 and beyond. So,
yes,
thank you so much to all of you who decided to tune in late night and watch this live. Thank you to everybody who is up early listening to this podcast, or maybe on your way to work on Monday morning, wherever this finds you. Hope you enjoyed what you saw in week 1. Thank you for being part of our community. For that guy over there, as always, his name is Dan Rubenstein. For myself, Ty Hildebrandt. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay solid.
Peace.